Doobie, 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 doo. Hey, everybody. For those of you watching this later, this is another one of our regularly semi-unscheduled live streams. Although they're actually becoming, semi-irregularly unscheduled. No, that doesn't make sense. I have not been doing very many of them lately at all. I have been negligent. I would say busy, which was true for a while, but is no longer true. I have not been busy for about 2 to 3 weeks, so I apologize. Our topic this evening is, hey, Mark, how you doing, sir? Uh, our topic this evening is nominally, that is, in name. I think nominally is, oh, it doesn't matter. The real risk of the P320 scandal. We won't spend much time on it because the real risk of the P320 scandal is very simple, and we'll be able to cover it very quickly. Although the whole situation is interesting to me for a whole host of reasons. Excuse me while I whip this out. Oh, this is not going to go well. This has a hole in it somewhere. Stick with me. Don't lose patience. We're going to talk for several hours, and at least 10 minutes of it's going to be extremely informative and interesting. And it would be awful if you missed out on those 10 minutes. Because I smoke cheap cigars and buy cheap matches. Corn Pop says, Glock supremacy. All right, so I know Glocks are good pistols. I know this. I don't deny it. But they bore me to tears. I can't. Glock just bores the crap out of me. Of course, SIG bores the crap out of me, too. All right. So we're going to talk about the real risk of the P320 scandal. I know that if you're here watching this channel, you are familiar with the P320 scandal. I will recap briefly just in case. Mark like Steyer. The SIG P320 is the gun that won the Army contract. Lots of cops have been using it. It's kind of the new Glock, right? It's a polymer frame, striker fired pistol that's just a little more allegedly refined. I've never shot one. I don't think I've ever even held one than the Glock. Because the Glock's kind of blocky and weird and angular, and the P320 is kind of like slick. From the get-go, there's been lots of drama around it. Apparently, you could fire it. It could have an unintentional discharge. I don't like this uncommanded discharge shit. Yeah, no, Corn Pop, absolutely. I know it reliably goes bang when you pull the trigger. I know. I don't deny it, and there are a lot of really, really, really good shooters, far better shooters than me, who think very, very. Okay, Patriot Pop, we'll do the important 10 minutes first. Give me about 3 minutes to work up to the important 10 minutes. I admire your honesty, sir. Yeah, the Glock goes bang every time. Very good shooters have a very high opinion of it. It just bores me. I'm a CZ75 fanboy, and we're kind of insufferable. Uh, we're one of the more insufferable fanboydoms. Uh, I had talked several women into buying Glocks. Is that some kind of innuendo, Mark? Are you speaking in euphemism? But yeah, Corn Pop, I don't deny that the Glock is a very, very good pistol. Don't deny it. I don't think it's. Oh, let me stop. We'll get into the Glock stuff later. Maybe. Okay, back to Sig. So right off the bat, Sig had problems, right? And I'm gonna run through this real quick because you all know the stuff. No, but yeah. Uh, so it was having some uh, unintentional discharges when it was dropped a certain way. Bad enough. Now there's this really interesting videos or scary videos where it just seems to be going off in people's holsters. Uh, I have my own theories. They're not unique to me. Wyoming Gun Project seems to have done the best work on this. I'm not saying his answer is the correct one because I'm not smart enough to know if it is or not. But by God, so far he's the only one I've seen who's come up with a mechanical explanation. Everyone else has just had stupid opinions, and this guy's at least fiddled with the gun and tried to see what would make it tick. So kudos to him. We won't waste Patriot Pop's time with the. We'll get into the Wyoming Gun Project videos because I think they're very interesting. Uh, but apparently they found some reason why or some way how this thing can, under certain circumstances, fire without the trigger being pulled. Maybe. Uh, this is a lot of nuance that we got to talk about later. But there's a lot of weird videos. Uh, it's like security cam footage and stuff of these things going off when people aren't handling them in a way that would normally make them go off. And now there's been one that went off. The 320s are gay. An airman set one on the table while it was in the holster, and it went off and killed another airman, or killed him. It killed an airman. I can't remember if it was the guy who set it down or the guy, or it's just someone said it. Anyway, someone's dead now. Young man. All I saw was his boot camp picture, and boot camp pictures are awful. If you've ever had a boot camp picture, it will be the worst picture in your life. Very hard to tell anything about anyone from their boot camp picture. But from that boot camp picture, he looked like a nice young man. Tragedy, obviously, for his. I don't want to even. I'm going to get real serious. I don't want to even imply that I'm being flippant or anything. Looked like a decent young man who was killed in a manner that's pretty hard to explain away by this pistol that was, according to the evidence, not proof, evidence. Remember, the difference between evidence and proof was in the pistol. The pistol was in the holster, and like whoever had pulled the whole holster off the belt and set it on the table, and then the weapon discharged and killed this young man. Very, very, very serious. Yeah, if Alec Baldwin was pointing a Sig, he may have had a case. Okay, so everyone's going nuts. Everyone's talking about how Sig has mishandled the whole thing, and absolutely, Sig has absolutely mishandled this. They got aggressive with it when what they should have done was instantly said and not change this at all. These incidents are under investigation. We're cooperating. We are committed to the safety of our products and yada yada yada. And our thoughts and prayers are with those affected by these terrible incidents. And said what Sig said was, it is impossible for our gun to yeah. And they really got on their high horse and got aggressive. Not completely insane strategy in the age of Trump, when everyone's learned the lesson that you can't kowtow to the libs and you can't back down from the mob. But who Sig was talking to was not the mob, and it wasn't the libs. It was the gun community, the concerned gun community, and the veteran community, and the law enforcement community. They weren't talking Hey, Dean. Good evening, sir. They weren't talking to their opponents. They were talking to their people, and they they did it in a way that was deeply off-putting to those communities who should be their main support. Anyway, we'll talk more about SIG because I have my questions about SIG. But here is my real problem, my real concern. I shouldn't say that. The real concern is the young man who's been killed and the other individuals who may have been injured or any future danger posed by these weapons. An underlying concern that once we've dealt with these primary concerns is that I'm really, really, really worried that the enemies of the Second Amendment are going to use this as a way to get their holy grail. The thing they want more than anything is to be able to sue gun companies. They want to be able to turn the legal system, unleash the trial lawyers and start suing the ever-loving shit out of gun companies, and run them out of business that way, and raise the cost so high due to liability and whatnot. And I am worried that they are going to be able to turn the the Second Amendment community against this one gun company and set some sort of precedent where they can start suing other gun companies. And that would be a tragedy because that really is their most effective route towards hamstringing the Second Amendment. To that end, I have heard rumors. I don't even have evidence, let alone proof. I have heard rumors that some anti-gun institutions, such as Giffords and Bloomberg and some of these others, have been pushing some of these narratives around the SIG P320. I am not a SIG fanboy. I've already said earlier that I'm a CZ75 guy. I owned one SIG. I did not like it. It wasn't a 320. It was a 2022, which was not a 22, incidentally. It was a 9mm, but the model number was 2022. If I remember correctly, it was the French military sidearm at the time. It was very unreliable. It was used. It wasn't new, so that's not necessarily SIG's fault. And I had a hand injury, specifically to my wrist. And yeah, you still see the scars. I don't know if you can still see the scars or not. But I had just had that hand injury. And so I wasn't sure that I wasn't limp wrist in that thing because of the hand. It was a pretty serious injury. So I just went ahead and traded it and got a revolver because I knew I could trust a revolver. So my experience with SIG is limited and not at all scientific. I have no intention of owning any SIGs in the future. I thought the 365 was an interesting little handgun, but yeah, not one that I'm going to spend the money on for the use. Not a SIG fanboy. And absolutely, we have to resolve this 320 issue. We cannot have our service members and our law enforcement personnel carrying around Patriot Pop. That was the important 10 minutes. I don't even know if it was 10 minutes. I apologize. That's the real risk in my mind of this SIG P320, that it's going to be this backdoor. I love steel frame pistols. My main carry gun is a steel frame pistol. You guys have seen it. That our enemies are going to do what they always do, which is look for any opening, look for any crack, look for any advantage they can get to try to. Hey Ryan, how you doing, sir? To gain a foothold and force daylight in the Second Amendment community and start going after gun companies. Doesn't matter what our Second Amendment rights are if they make it impossible for us to buy guns or impossible for us to buy ammunition. Or they're able to raise the prices so high that the vast majority of us can't access it anyway. To me, that is the real problem of the 320 controversy. And I am not saying that the controversy should be ignored. I'm not saying that SIG should get a free pass on this, because if there is a design flaw in this pistol, and it looks to me like there is, then shame on SIG, because SIG has done this to us. And certainly SIG has not fixed the problem. Even if there's not a problem, they haven't done what it took to put this thing to rest, because they didn't come out uh, thoughtfully or with humility, uh, or even, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, they didn't come out with a calm, measured, thoughtful response that made anyone think they were taking concerns seriously. Even if they didn't think there was any concern, because someone else pointed out recently, I think it was the Yankee Marshal. So these two guys, one I'd never heard of before, Wyoming Gun Project, who had never seen his channel before, had this excellent, at least attempt at looking at the problem. And then the Yankee Marshal, who is the Ron Jeremy of GunTube, uh, uh, who's usually just a flamer, but no, I mean, he might be a flamer too. He makes jokes like that all the time. But like, as far as he just likes to start flame wars. His whole thing is flame wars and the hot take. And sometimes he'll have one whole video of a hot take that's not even his take, and he'll reverse it at the end and act like he was being sarcastic. Uh, so he's like this hot take uh, uh, clickbait guy, but he's kind of honest about being a hot take clickbait guy, and he's really entertaining about being a hot take clickbait guy. And he does have excellent taste in guns, but he hates everybody. Uh, hey, Les. Uh, uh, so he's kind of an entertaining channel. I'm sure he's one of the bigger channels. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with him. The Yankee Marshal Project. He's had a good take, and he's the one who pointed out that, and he has the opposite take from the Wyoming Gun Project. These are kind of two opposite sides, but I think they're both valid opinions. And his whole point was that, Glock had kind of these similar things when it first came out. There were a lot of claims about Glocks being unsafe. Uh, part of it was just that it was a new design. Part of it was who's using it, because look, I'm a veteran. I, love the military. I love it, but lots of times the people who are carrying these pistols, there's 1 million people in our military. That's just the military, and if you put, I don't even know how many pistols. Obviously, there wouldn't be 1 million pistols, but what is there? 150,000. Well, when you got 150,000 of anything being given to people who are not dedicated to that thing, and they're using it periodically or episodically with minimal training, yes, just the law of averages tells you eventually something stupid's going to happen, especially while people are learning it, getting used to it. You're trying to figure out what its teething problems were. So on one hand, you gotta be honest with yourself and say, hey, this pistol is brand new. Well, not brand new, but it's new. It handles different. And we're giving it to people, and yeah, there's going to be some failures. Happens with any piece of gear coming out. And here's what we'll probably end up talking about the most this evening. Maybe I should have led with this, but this was also from the Yankee Marshal. He talked about operator culture and how he thinks the true risk is operator culture. I don't like that term, but I think it's it's as good as any. I shouldn't say I don't like it. I should say I've never heard that term before, and I don't think it's as descriptive as it could be. But I think it's a good term for what's going on. And so we'll talk about operator culture more going forward after Patriot Pop's gone to bed. Which he's probably already fallen asleep in his easy chair. Anywho, but what Wyoming Gun Project did, and I don't know anything about this guy. This is the first time I've ever seen his stuff. But he's got a couple of the pistols, 3 of the pistols, I think, and he started fiddling with them. And what he's demonstrated numerous times across different videos, and I think I've seen one other channel do it now too since he's done it, is he's shown, and I don't see how this isn't a problem. I mean, this seems like a problem to me. He's he's loaded the chamber, and he's taken all the slack out of the trigger. Not now he hasn't. Again, all you men know this because the kind of men who watch this channel watch all these other channels, and you know everything I know. But there's that small amount of play in the trigger before you hit what's called the wall or the resistance, and before you start actually manipulate, before the trigger starts actually doing anything that would cause the weapon to fire, there's this small amount of play in the trigger called take up. That's what I've heard it called, take up. He takes out the take up, hits that wall of resistance before the trigger actually starts working. And then if you squeeze the slide or twist the slide, the striker will fall. And of course, once the striker falls, that's the firing pin, and the weapon discharges. Now, the trigger is still being touched in these tests. But here's why I think that this is the explanation. There's nothing about the trigger that has it not against that wall. That take up is just free play. It's like slop almost. It's just movement there in the trigger, and anything could have that trigger back against the wall. It could just be inertia. It could have just not been like pushed forward. There's nothing to push the trigger away from that wall of resistance. So when you've got hundreds of thousands of people carrying hundreds of thousands of examples of this firearm, and one tolerance could be this, and another tolerance could be that, and there could just be one where, for whatever reason, that trigger is back against the take up, against the wall. Sticky trigger. Or someone pointed out, I don't remember who it was, it may have been Yankee Marshall again, you've got a holster that's just not designed quite right for this pistol. And it's gotten the trigger, pushed back just a little bit. Not enough that it would ever fire the gun itself, but it's got the trigger pushed back enough so that what this thing called the striker safety. Now, I'm not a gunsmith. I know a little bit about the things, but I'm not an expert. So these are all things I've seen other people say. The speculation right now, the best explanation I've seen, let me put it that way. The best explanation I've seen, and the only explanation I've seen, and the only one I've seen attempt to make the explanation, which in my opinion, I don't care if it's right, Wyoming Gun Project deserves a gun tube Oscar for at least fiddling with the damn thing and trying to figure out some sort of mechanical explanation. Because these guns is 100-year-old technology. Everything on a modern pistol, every single element on a modern pistol is at least 100 years old. At least 100 years old. They were, John Browning started designing the, what would turn into the high power back in the 20s, 1920, maybe it was the late teens even. He didn't finish it. He died and someone else finished it. But the basic, we're all familiar with the 1911. The basic technology we're dealing with here dates back to pre-World War I. I think the 1911's basic technology came from a design John Browning did in 1905. So we're talking about 120-year-old stuff here. Strikers existed on rifles for, I think most bolt-action rifles are striker-fired. I'm fairly confident that most bolt-action rifles are striker-fired. We got bolt-action rifles going back to the 1880s, maybe even farther than that. So we're not dealing with any one element here that should be a mystery to anybody. Like all of this stuff should have been, how many gun companies have there been over the years? How many people have tried to design and manufacture a gun? Patriot Pop's still with us. There should be no mysteries here about these pistols. This is just a striker-fired, polymer framed. I'm assuming it's a tilting barrel. I don't know why it wouldn't be. I mean, everything is, right? Tilting barrel design. This thing has existed since 1905. I mean, not maybe all together in one piece, but all of these elements have been around for over 120 years. So why do people keep telling me their opinion on SIG's handling of the public relations side of this problem? Bullshit. Someone needs to dig into this pistol and figure out what the hell is going on. Wyoming Gun Project is the first one I've seen to try and do so. So as far as I'm concerned, he deserves the gun tube Oscars for year 2025. Well done, sir. I don't care if he came up with the right answer. He's just a guy. What I care is that he looked at the problem and tried to figure it out, and he added information. You know, this is the internet age. We're supposed to crowdsource everything. So Wyoming Gun Project, whether what you came up with proves to be the real issue or not, I applaud you. Not that you'll ever see this, but I applaud you for at least looking at the problem and trying to come up with an explanation from the mechanical standpoint. Everyone else I've seen, and these are gun channels that I enjoy and subscribe to and will continue to watch, they've all just had this finger wag about SIG and their public relations team. Tim, I think what we've got is, yes, shoddy quality control combined with an aggressive design. And this gets back to the operator culture stuff. So let's go ahead and talk about operator culture. And this is, again, the Yankee Marshal brought this up. But I've noticed this since I was in the military, and I was back in the 90s. I joined in 95, and I got out in 2002. And this was true back then, too. And it was everyone wanted to be SEAL Team 6. Everybody wanted to be high speed, low drag. The problem. Oh, okay. So how did we see this play out? Well, the short barrel craze. Why? Why do we think short barrels are important? Well, because Special Forces had short barrels. Why did Special Forces have short barrels? Because Special Forces are elite. Unbelievable. These are some unbelievable men. All right. These are truly spectacular men who do incredibly impressive things, and they can make compromises and deal with things on the margins that you couldn't do with the million-man force. They wanted short barrels for the really highly specific things they were doing, where that compromise didn't affect them. You know, the problem is then we take those things that these elite, highly trained warfighters who get millions of dollars worth of special training a year, fire thousands, tens of thousands of rounds a year, I mean, and then we take stuff from them and we try to devolve it down into the regular force. Even me in the infantry, I was an infantryman, and I didn't get but a couple thousand rounds a year, you know, and none of that intense high speed training that like the SEALs were getting or the recon guys or any. I didn't get any of that stuff. A short barrel was good for the SEALs or good for recon, but you know what? Those guys, they had the credibility. They got to say what they wanted their gear to be. They got to say what they needed and what they didn't need. In the regular infantry, cutting 4 inches off the end of our rifles accomplished nothing. It accomplished nothing. Those combat is not the same thing as your girlfriend. Okay, all right. 4 inches might matter to in that context, but in the military and in the regular infantry in the regular forces, 4 inches means nothing. I have deployed an M16A2 out of Iraq in a Humvee, no problem. Didn't have problem one. Fixed buttstock, 20-inch barrel, carry handle, came right up, and I went hot. Those of you who've ridden in Humvees, you know where well, this was back in the 90s. I don't know what happened. That was 30 years ago now. God, I'm old. But there was this rack where your buttstock was on the floor and your barrel clipped into this little clip right there on the dashboard. This was for the driver. The passengers had something similar on that side too. But it kind of just sat there in an upright position, and the barrel was kind of like right up at the top of the steering wheel. And we would do these drills where we call it live fire movement to contact, and you would be driving, and then someone would yell enemy to the left or whatever, and you would deploy your rifle out of the rack and start shooting from the driver's seat. No problem, and no problem whatsoever. I can't imagine the M4 was any faster. So what was the issue? Just wanted to look cool. We wanted to be like the damn SEALs. And we see it even now with that other SIG abomination, the M7, where because they wanted here we do need those clips in cars now, because they wanted a short barrel. This obsession with short barrels. Why do they want short barrels? Well, because Special Forces has short barrels, and because they're obsessed with having a short barrel, they have a 13-pound infantry rifle. I'm sorry. As an infantryman, anytime anyone says as an anything, you should usually roll your eyes and tell them to shut up and go away because they're probably about to say something stupid and myopic. But as an infantryman, you take your 13-pound rifle and you shove it up your 275-pound ass. Anyone who chooses a 13-pound infantry rifle has never carried a rifle for 26 miles with a loaded pack. I'm sorry. I am sure we will find out that the people in the I'm sure they were absolute, career infantrymen. They got ribbons all the way up the top of their shoulder and down their back, whatever. I have a really hard time believing anyone that chose a 13-pound infantry rifle has ever actually lived with their rifle as an infantryman. You wouldn't make that choice. And also, you can have a 13-inch barrel. Why? CQB. Well, screw you. You can do CQB with a standard size rifle. Anyway, but this is the operator culture, which SIG has bought into, and the P320, the M7, M17, and M18, right? Are attempts at doing this same thing of taking an operator pistol, a special forces type weapon, and devolving it down to the troops. The troops don't need and can't utilize a weapon like that. And the problem is and this is my opinion. This is opinion. See, the 320, the SIG was trying to make an operator pistol on a Ruger budget. There was a really inexpensive pistol. They beat Glock by like a couple $100 or some significant amount of money per pistol. And yet they were still trying to make it feel and operate like a high-end race gun. And that's the other problem. This operator culture has drifted from the operators, where it should be, where it belongs, where it's appropriate, and it's devolved down to all these. I want to be careful here. Hold on a second. All these gun celebrities who don't have a military background. Now, is the military background the be all end all? I think the basic infantryman background is the most important. But you start getting these guys like Carl over at In Range TV, very knowledgeable, excellent shooter. Demolition Ranch, when he was still around, excellent shooter. James Reeves over at TFB TV, really good shooter. These guys start getting into competitions and training really hard because they want to be good at their topic. I mean, these are gun tubers, these are ambitious, driven men, usually who want to be good in their field, and so they go get training and they compete and they get a very, very laser-like focus on shaving seconds off of how quickly they knock over steel plates. And there is value in that, a lot of value in that. I'm not saying there's not value in that, but you start losing sight of some things. Like a Sinistral Rifleman, who's also another amazing shooter. He was talking recently about an issue about why he prefers a certain type of magazine over a different type of magazine. And his main point was that when he's in a competition and he dumps those magazines in a loose bag he has hanging off of his hip, rounds tend to come out of the magazine he doesn't like. Well, that's an incredibly specific set of circumstances that only exists in competition. The rest of the time, the other magazine has an advantage of being more mechanically reliable, having a higher potential for reliability. Not that the other magazine is unreliable. It's double feed versus single feed, and he likes the single feed because the single feed works in his ammo carry system for his competitions better. That's a completely valid reason why he would want to use that magazine. It's a completely invalid reason for why he would suggest it to the rest of us, or for the vast majority of the gun community who's never going to be involved in competitions. Things that are good in competition are probably not good for the rest of us. And this comes back to the 320 again. I've never shot the 320, but what I'm hearing is that it's got a really light trigger pull, like a 3-pound trigger pull, because it's been influenced by these operators and these competitors cross-pollinating each other. You know, they've gotten this feedback loop where the competitors get these really, really highly focused weapons that give up ergonomics and margin of safety for split-second differences in times, and then they're kind of basing their little scenarios off of what the special forces guys do, and the special forces guys are looking at these high-end competitors and legitimately adopting some of the things they do, as they should, because these are the special forces guys who train enough and are talented enough, and for the lack of a better term, athletic. It's not the right term, but they are incredibly athletic with incredible reflexes and incredible hand-eye coordination. I mean, these are just, generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, when I've met special forces guys, this is like they're just different. They're just different. And their mindset is different, and their bodies are different, and their skill sets are different. These are men who could probably have been professional athletes in other scenarios. I've met a couple of professional baseball players over the years. I got to meet Tom Glavine, and I got to meet John Smoltz, and just like briefly as a fan. And they kind of have not that same feel, but a similar feel where you're just, they're different. Their bodies are different. You can tell the way they carry themselves. They just physically kind of inhabit a different set of laws of physics or something. I don't know. But this is the operator culture. And I don't think it's just operator culture. I think it's the competitive culture, the competitive shooters like the IPSC 3-gun guys, like the Carl Casadas and Sinistro Riflemen and all these guys who are just doing their best to be good gun tubers. I'm not criticizing them. What I'm criticizing is that no one wants to be the basic rifleman anymore. No one doesn't want to be that solid, dependable, uh, relatively well trained infantryman. They don't want to be that man in the gap. They want to be that guy in the helo coming in fast, and awesome. If you can do it, fantastic. But that guy in the helo coming in fast, he's not the one who wins the war. He wins battles. The guy who wins the war is the man with the infantry rifle. The man carrying the service pistol, the ones taking and holding territory. It's the basic grunt, and everything. And the military and police officers shouldn't lose sight of that. And no one agrees with me because I can't. This is one of the most least viewed live streams I've had in a long time. So clearly people think I'm crazy, and that's fine. I am crazy. And Tim would rather be a sniper. And what big army and police officer, the police forces and law enforcement, and probably even my beloved Corps. I mean, I'm a partisan, but I got to be honest. We've lost sight of that. We all want to be the high speed, low drag operators, and if that's what you want to be, then fantastic. But go be that. Don't try to LARP it. Don't try to fake it. Don't say, oh no, look, I'm SEAL Team 6 because I have SEAL Team 6 weapons. But you're not SEAL Team 6. You're a basic infantryman, and that's honorable, good. If we had to choose one or the other, if we had to have the 1,500, 3,000 men in the SEAL teams, or we had to have the 300,000 men in Big Army, we have to take the 300,000 men in Big Army, because as good as the SEALs are, they can't do it all. There's just not enough of them. You gotta have the infantry force first, and then you add this other stuff on top. And in my opinion, that's probably what's at the base of all of this. Just like this confluence of operator culture and competitive culture made a bunch of dumbasses think that a 13-pound rifle was perfectly okay. And I think that's 13 pounds without ammunition. It made them think a service pistol with a 3.5-pound trigger pull was okay. Why? Because trigger pull will help shave seconds off of your follow-up shot time. Well, who freaking cares? It's not safe. No service weapon should have less than a 5.5-pound trigger pull. And that's not me just coming up with arbitrary numbers. It's been like, it might be an arbitrary number, but this is the standard that's been set for a long time in different. I know it was in the military, because that's what they decided was safe on a service weapon. Anything less than 5.5 pounds, and you start getting. They're not even dummies. These are just lots of people in lots of weird situations. Like, we used to sleep with our rifles in mummy sleeping bags, and you'd roll over on your rifle all night long. But we had to sleep with the damn thing. All right. Was that necessary, or was it smart? I don't know. I was ordered to do it, so I did it. Your design for these weapons has to be able to encompass the fact that a million. I think the average age in the military is 21. A million 21-year-olds, mostly men, are going to be handling these things day in, day out in really weird, unpredictable circumstances, not of their own choosing. And the people in charge are 25. You know, like the average age above a certain rank is like 25. So we got a bunch of 25-year-olds telling a bunch of 21-year-olds what to do, but in reality, we're dealing with a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds. No, you don't give them a 3.5 pound trigger pull because on the competition range, it shaves a few seconds off Carl Casada's uh, times. And not that there's anything wrong with Carl. I'm just picking on Carl because he's actually a really, really good shooter, and he doesn't have any practical experience with just living with a weapon day in, day out. Until you've sat in a porta potty in 120-degree heat with a rifle, you haven't experienced the full spectrum of living with a rifle, And the same thing with a pistol. What do you go to the porta potty and you drop trowel and where's your pistol? What do you do with your pistol? Do you let it sit on the floor of the porta potty? Do you hold it in your hand while you're taking a shit? What do you do when you're wiping your ass? I mean, you if you've never taken a dump with a pistol, you might not understand that these are problems you have to solve. And suddenly you've got 300,000 18-year-olds trying to solve them in theater. Uh, and you're going to give them a weapon with a 3.5 pound trigger pull that's designed to operate on the edge of the margin of safety. And you can't do that. You have to give these kids a, 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 a wider margin of safety. You can't have a pistol where the safeties disengage first, which is what looks like is going on with this P320. It looks like the safety that keeps the trigger, I'm sorry, the safety that keeps the firing pin, it's an internal safety that keeps the firing pin from impacting the primer, is disengaged when the slack is taken out of the trigger. But it's so that means so you don't want that safety disengaged until the trigger has been deliberately pulled. The margin of safety is on the wrong end of this process here. We're disengaging the safety and then performing the process when you should be performing the process, and that disengages the safety. It looks like that's what happened here. My opinion, obviously, I don't have any information that I haven't heard others say. Uh, all in the pursuit of a trigger pull and a trigger resistance that's not necessary for the task. The task is a service weapon, a service sidearm. This is something that's rarely ever going to get used. I mean, think about it. I have a Ruger Security 6 in there with is it an 11 pound or a 13 pound? With an insane trigger pull. It's an insane trigger pull. It doesn't stop me from rapid firing 6 shots at 7 yards in a man-sized target, which is what you need a revolver to do. I am glad. I am glad these competitive shooters are out there. I'm glad there's things like IPSC. I'm glad there's things like 3 Gun. These guys are developing techniques and gear and information that will make the rest of us better. But what has to be remembered is that they are operating in a false environment. This is not the real world. Uh, the only concern is not how quick can I get steel on target. I won't carry. I shouldn't say that because I might. I am very reluctant to carry a pistol that does not have an external safety. I'm sorry. I like to carry a pistol with the safety engaged. When I carry, uh, hey, I'll have to check that out, Dick Fairburn. I like to carry with the safety engaged and my pistol on half cock. My pistol has a half cock and a safety. That means I have to click off the safety, and then I have a stiffer trigger pull still than straight single action, because I'm not SEAL Team Six. I want a little bit of margin between me and something uh, permanent. At the end of the day, my pistol is about protecting and and preserving. And if I kill and destroy, then I have completely wasted the whole. I've destroyed the whole point of me having a pistol. And people always say, "Well, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6." No, I'm sorry, that's not true. There are times when maybe you just need to take the bullet. I There's a story, and it's a true story. I don't remember all the details. This was many years ago now at this point, but it's I'm sure it's happened more than once. I mean, I know it's happened more than once. But a guy thought someone was breaking into his house, and he shot the guy, and it turned out to be his son sneaking. His son had snuck out and was sneaking back in, and he shot his son in the middle of the night. Uh, you know what? That guy should have been willing to take that bullet. That story haunts me. No. We have a responsibility. Our survival is not the most important thing in the world. Uh, we don't carry weapons to protect ourselves. We carry weapons to protect others. Uh, at least Christian men. If you're a Christian man carrying a pistol or any weapon, that has to be about the people around you. From a religious standpoint, you can't be carrying that pistol for yourself. You have to be carrying it for the people around you, which means, by the way, you have to have people around you. Uh, but I say this, you all have heard me say this before. All right, we got Buddy Bear in the chat. Let's see what Buddy Bear has to say. Uh, Buddy Bear's been with us for 30 minutes. I carried a SIG 225 for 3 years and never went bang unless my finger was on the trigger. Just want to let you know I'm out here going to bed. Give me a holler. I will give you a holler, Buddy Bear. I have something to tell you. I've been meaning to call you for a while. The cow situation resolved itself. Yeah. Let's just say that experiment was as big a failure as you said it would be. But I'll call you. You'll call me or something. Yo, if you're putting other people at risk with your pistol in preference for your life, well, then you shouldn't be carrying a pistol anyway. If you're riding on the ragged edge of disaster because you're so determined to shoot someone else before they shoot you, you need to reevaluate why you're carrying a pistol. I am not saying that your life doesn't matter. I'm not saying that you should be that you shouldn't be carrying the best option available. I'm saying that you need to that the confluence of your skills and ability and your gear needs to be such as that you are not endangering people around you. Uh, Good night, Patriot Pop. Thank you, sir. And I won't budge from that. You know, if if you're one of these is like, oh, I can't have retention on my. That's the other thing. I won't carry that retention on my holster. I had two things happen that were deeply embarrassing, but beyond that, they were unsafe. And twice I had a pistol pop out of a holster. Uh, One, I was jogging, and I was at a gas station, and it was raining, and I was jogging from the pumps to get uh, into the store, and my pistol just flopped out of my holster. It wasn't a. It was like a Blackhawk holster. I think it was a Blackhawk holster. It wasn't a cheap holster, but it didn't have any retention. And then I was at a restaurant on deck. I wasn't drinking or anything, and it was the same pistol in the same holster. And I had leaned against the railing, and when I went to stand up against the railing, the pistol caught underneath the railing and pulled out of the holster and dropped it in front of everybody. Deeply humiliating incidents that and the very first one should have been all it took for me to say, "Oh God, no, I need retention holsters." Now, if I carry, I've got a retention holster. Does that slow me down getting my pistol out of my holster? Absolutely. What's more likely to happen? Am I more likely to get shot because it took me another split second to get my pistol out of the holster? Or is it more likely that my pistol falls out of its holster again, goes off and kills someone? And what's the worst thing? I would say to you, killing an innocent person inadvertently is far worse than me losing a gunfight, a legitimate gunfight. Like if it just comes down to, oh, it's me or them, the bad guys here, this is the balloon goes up, this is what it's all about, and I lose, okay, I died a hero. I did what I was supposed to do. I just didn't do it quite well enough. Hopefully I created time for people to get away. Hopefully I did some good. If I kill some innocent bystander because I'm a dumbass, or because I think I'm frickin' SEAL Team 6, or because I'm carrying things that were designed for the wrong scenario, that's not me, and I'm a killer at that point, possibly even a murderer. Well, at least a negligent homicider, a negligent homicidal maniac, and that's not who I want to be. That is not who I am. I am not that man. And who's likely to be around me? Like, it's not like I'm. Most of the time, the people around me are people I know, people I love, people I like. I mean, those are the people we're with most of the time: our family, our friends, our coworkers, our neighbors. These are the people who are around us. And if I'm being stupid with a firearm, not even being stupid with a firearm, but if I have thank you, if I have a gear that is not appropriate to the situation because it strokes my ego or because it allows me to have a tenth of a second faster draw time, and someone gets hurt, I am a negligent homicidal maniac. That's not the right term. But that harm is on me. And that, in my opinion, is one of the dangers in this operator culture that the Yankee Marshal was talking about, and I think he was right about. But why do we carry? We carry to protect the people we love, the institutions we value, the ideals we think are important. Damn, no one likes this talk. But of course, I'm just repeating myself now. And so, the whole P320 thing, it's not necessarily SIG's fault. This is Big Army's fault, or I'm sorry, this is the Pentagon's fault, the defense industry's fault. This is our fault in the Second Amendment community. It's law enforcement's fault, because we've all forgotten who we are and what our priorities are. And we have allowed, again, like the special forces guys, this isn't their problem. They not only do they need this type of gear, but they can use this type of gear. Right? It's not the competitive shooter's fault necessarily. They go to safe environments with strict rules and guidelines, and they are very disciplined about safety and about proper technique and parameters and the whole 9 yards. Those guys are doing this in a responsible manner. Those of us who are out here in the wild, those of us who might try to, I mean, show me the last time an IPSC guy ran from the gas pump to the gas station to not get rained on. Okay, these are things that don't get accounted for in competition. If an operator, a real operator, is out in the sandbox and he drops his pistol because he's being aggressive, he picks it up and puts it back in his holster. And if anything bad happened, it either happened to him or it happened to, I mean, it's the environment. Unfortunately, bad things happen in combat. That's why you don't start wars with the United States of America, because if you make us send our special forces operators anywhere near you, you've sort of signed up for a lot of hurt and unpleasantness. But those are the proper environments for those things. The Walmart is not the proper environment. And I would go so far. No, I don't. I mean, I will absolutely say the regular people, the regular infantry, the MPs, the cops, the regular officers who carry pistols and rifles. This applies to the rifle too. This damn, XM7. I'm sorry, I despise the whole concept of this XM7. They don't need to be looking for every last little bit of performance. Really, really interesting case study about this that just occurred to me. I go through these phases all the time of things that are interesting to me. For a long time it was the French Revolution. And then for a long time it was feminism. For some reason right now I'm really into World War II aircraft. Don't know why. Well, I mean, it's an interesting topic, but I'm obsessed with it right now. And there's this really interesting case study about this between the Corsair and the Hellcat. I think the Corsair was the F4U Corsair, if I remember correctly, and the Hellcat was like the F6. Anyway, the Corsair was a better aircraft in almost every category. It was faster. It was more maneuverable. It was lighter. It had better range. And I think it had more firepower. Maybe they had a similar firepower. I'm pulling all this from memory, so I may have individual detail. Was it the F6 Corsair and the F4 Hellcat? Whatever it was. The Hellcat, though, wasn't as good as the Corsair in every category, but it wasn't much worse. And it cost about a quarter as much to make. And so there were about 4 times as many of them in theater, and it was actually one of the most important naval fighters in the second half of World War II, because it was very good. It wasn't as good as the top end, but it was still very good, and it was reliable, and you could produce just a ton of them. And it was the most significant naval fighter aircraft in the second half of the war, by a large margin. And we see the same thing at the beginning of the war. Japan comes screaming out of the east with this A60 that is just absolutely the hottest thing in the air, flying off of a carrier. Fast, light, maneuverable, got some of the best trained pilots in the world. No one can keep up with it. It's almost unbeatable, except there's this boring, obsolete, big, clunky thing called the P-40 Warhawk that initially is getting just blown out of the air by this A6M0, I think. And it is outclassed in almost every area, except a few. But guess what? The P-40 wins. Why does the P-40 win? Well, because they figured out how to use it. They quit trying to get into dogfights with these Japanese fighter, the Zeros, because they couldn't dogfight it. They had the only advantages they had was I think they had a slightly better service ceiling, and they could dive better, and they had more guns, very American, and they had better armor. And so they adopted these techniques called boom and zoom, and uh, and they ran the zeros out of the sky. Uh, Even though the Zero was a fantastically better dogfighting airplane. The American pilots actually just kind of abandoned dogfighting. They wouldn't dogfight with them anymore. They would, uh, yeah, don't try to turn with a Zero. They would go up high. They would try to jump a Zero. If they couldn't, if it didn't work, as they called it, boom and zoom. Uh, they would jump them. If they didn't get them right away, they just went into a steep dive. The Zero couldn't keep up with them in the dive, and they got away, came back, and tried again. I think the Warhawk, I think the P-40 had more fuel, had a farther range too. There is a lesson in that. You know, the the base level isn't about, if we bring it back to like the infantry or just us as men out in the world, we don't have to beat the Zeros. We're the P-40. We need to be the P-40, and we need to develop the tactics that work for the skills and the equipment we have, and that will make us the strongest and most victorious that we can be. But if we try to fake it, if we try to get in there and dogfight with the Zero, you're going to lose. You're not a Zero pilot. You're not flying a Zero aircraft. You're the A6M0. You're not an operator. You're not an IPSC competitor. You're a good, solid, average man who's a far better shot and far better equipped to handle firearms than 99% of the population. But that just means you're an average gun owner, or maybe you're above average, but you're not special, and that's good. There's nothing that's a feature, not a bug. We got to have the P-40s. We got to have the Hellcats, and the Corsairs can be for those extreme situations. Fascinating period of history, World War II, obviously. I mean, there's an entire television network dedicated to World War II. They call it the History Channel. But it's just the history from 1938 to 1945. But we entered World War II. This is no joke. When World War II started, there were still biplane fighters in frontline units with some major militaries. The P-40 that I was just talking about was kind of a monoplane refinement of a biplane design. We were only, even in America, just one generation away from biplane fighters. When the war starts in 1938, fighters, mind you, fighters. The war ends in 1945, and we have jet fighters. Both the British and obviously, famously, the Germans had fielded jet fighters. They had essentially gone into the war with biplanes, and they came out of the war with jet fighters. Unbelievable period of technological advancement. I mean, and we came out of the war with nuclear weapons too. I mean, we went into that war and almost everyone was using bolt action rifles, and we come out of that war with jet fighters and nuclear bombs. Just a earth-shattering period. And leave us not forget that 1903, when we first flew, wasn't that long ago. Prior to that, so what? We're talking about 35 years. The war starts in 38. So 35 years prior, the Wright brothers fly for the first time. some interesting controversies around the Wright brothers too in the first flights. There's this really cool channel called Greg's Airplanes, I think, who does a bunch of deep dives into the controversies surrounding the Wright brothers and the first flights and all the different theories and everything. The conclusion is quite boring. The conclusion is that no, the Wright brothers were the first, and it's not even like controversial when you see the evidence. But a really fascinating story, a bunch of storylines about who all was trying and what their claims were and why their claims didn't work and or why their claims don't hold up and all this stuff. Um, I've been spending some time in aviation history lately because of this World War II plane fascination. Uh, it's sort of expanding out now because I've kind of watched a bunch of stuff on the. There's only so many planes that saw active duty in World War II, although there was a lot. Holy smokes! Even just in like America and in the major powers, shocking amounts of different bombers and fighters, and then all the support planes and then the experimental planes and the whole 9 yards. I've been watching a lot of it, and I don't have anywhere near a grasp on it yet. Anybody up for a little bit of a? I haven't seen any comments. Of course, we've only got 13 people in the chat. My grandma was working on wiring the planes during World War II. She was tiny and perfect for the job. That's cool. Oh, Mark points out that Navy SEALs use 1911s and Glocks. And Mark also said that we were having a good discussion. Thank you, sir. Patriot. Oh man, we got a Dirty Harry quote in the chat. That's the Dick Fairburn. Jerry Compton. Sorry, Jerry, if you're still here, I didn't see your comment pop up. William, Tim, 10 Tigers. I didn't see 10 Tigers pop in either. Mark likes the A2. Oh, that's interesting, Tim. Tim says he does not carry with one in the pipe. I'm okay with that. A lot of these operator types would hey, Palmetto showed up all of a sudden. How you doing, Palmetto? You missed a good discussion. We're not done yet, though. I mean, I've still got a ways to go. But carrying, what is that condition? Is that condition 1? Magazine inserted, no round in chamber. I'm bad at conditions. I mean, I'm okay with that. If that's how you're comfortable carrying, then you're still better armed than 99.9% of the people around you who aren't carrying anything. And this idea that you don't have time to rack a slide assumes that like some situation happens and you're the one targeted immediately. Or I guess that you are the target of like a mugging. But I got to be honest with you, man. If someone, thank you, William. If someone is gonna mug me and all he's gonna do is take my wallet and he's not gonna molest my wife or the problem is you can't know if that's the case or not. But if you knew for sure, hey, this guy's just gonna steal my wallet and that's the only thing that's gonna happen in this scenario, I think it would be immoral to shoot him. Even if he's like holding a knife. Now, if he pulls a gun, absolutely. If someone's pointing a gun at you, you have to take him at face value. You have to believe that he's willing to shoot you. But if someone like runs up and is like, "Give me your wallet, or I'm gonna beat the shit out of you," and it's a guy who could beat the shit out of you, I think you got to give him your wallet. Okay, so Palmetto brings up a good point. If someone tried to victimize me in any way and I can prevent it and I don't share in his guilt the next time he does it. So the underlying thought here being that if someone gets away with something, they're going to keep doing it and it might escalate it. And if you stop it, then the next person doesn't have to deal with it. Or if you allow evil to happen, you've participated in the evil. This would I'm paraphrasing and I may be putting words in Palmetto's mouth. Uh, but considering all the other things he puts in his mouth, a few words aren't gonna. Sorry. Uh, but if we're talking about killing someone in order to prevent him stealing a wallet, I don't think that's proportionate to the level that, again, assuming that you could know that there wasn't going to be any further harm in that moment other than you losing your wallet. I'm not sure we can justify killing the guy. I'm not. I'm sure you pull the gun. See, maybe you can stop it. But if it came down to pulling the trigger, no, no, no. Because if you pull the gun, you got to be willing to pull the trigger. Uh, well, don't 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 torture the scenario too much, Palmetto. I mean, it is a false scenario. It is a what if, situational ethics sort of thing. It's not an accurate scenario, but just from a moral perspective, you know, all people are made in the image of God. God loves that mugger every bit as much as he loves you, possibly more, because that mugger's the lost sheep. Remember the parable. In the parable, the shepherd leaves the 99 sheep to go looking for the lost sheep, or the housewife. She finds the lost gold coin and she rejoices more over that one lost coin than she did the 99 she still had. Uh, that's referring to the mugger fits that category. It's not that God loves the mugger more than you, but you're that coin that's safe in the cache, or the sheep that's safe in the paddock, and it's the one that he's losing that he's concerned about. At what point can you use deadly force? Is a God. I lost more people. At what point can you use deadly force? Is legitimate. Yeah. Mark's girlfriend called. You have an understanding wife, Mark. If she doesn't mind your girlfriend calling this late. You know, all men are made. I think I remember that, Mark, and I shouldn't have been making silly jokes. I'm sorry. All men are made in the image of God, and when you strike another man, you're striking at the image of God. So there has to be. That makes violence sacred, by the way, because we're interacting with something sacred. Uh, Violence is an action against a sacred image. If God's image isn't sacred, then nothing is sacred. So when you participate in violence against another human, and that's the only violence there is, in my opinion, unless you're like torturing animals, but that's something else. Uh, you're you're participating in a sacred action, uh, and those should be performed with care. You know, you don't treat sacred things carelessly or nonchalantly. Got an interesting passage of the Bible. I guess we've gotten into the religious stuff, so let me just go the rest of the way. I mean, hell, I couldn't lose any more passage recently, and it's a passage I interact with a lot because of some beliefs I have that are a little scandalous to most Christians, um, and so when I have to defend these beliefs, I frequently end up at this one passage. And I was there again because I was another one of these debates because I love debates. Uh, and it's a Pauline, it's one of Paul's writings, and I have learned that Paul is just so complex and so dense and so filled with overflowing with ideas. The, Paul's Paul's letters are like a snake orgy. You know, they're just writhing balls of ideas slithering around all over the place. Uh, and so I was refreshing my understanding of the passage going into the debate because I mean I knew where it was going, and so I decided to track the whole idea all the way back. I'd never done that before, where I just started in the verse and started going backwards until I found where he started the thought, so I could see what the whole purpose of the rest of because Paul has a thought and then he develops that thought, and sometimes he develops like 4 or 5 thoughts in between and comes to a conclusion at the end that anyway you've really got to to be on your toes when you're reading Paul. And so I tracked this thought all the way back, and it starts farther back than I'd ever realized, and it's Romans 1:18 is where the thought starts. Palmetto, if you don't mind, I know you've been able to do this in the past. We were able to post the text of scriptures. Uh, I would normally use my phone to pull it up real quick, but obviously I'm talking to you on my phone, so I can't do that. And rather than run inside and get a hard copy, if you don't mind putting up the text of Romans 1:18, if you can't, that's fine. And this is a verse I have never noticed before. I don't know why I've never noticed this verse. I have spent a lot of time in Romans 1 because of these debates I keep getting into. Uh, but Romans 1:18 has what's the right word? It has brought some things into clear focus and firmed up my thoughts on some stuff. Okay, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. There's another version of that says who. Oh, what's it say? Damn it! What version is that, Palmetto? I want to say the version I was reading New King James when I read it, or no, NASB. Okay, the KJV. Do you have access to the NASB 95 by any? Suppress the Truth. Thank you, Ten Tigers. That's the one that I read. So let's insert that suppress. Yeah, hold would be hold back. So the men who hold back, I'm adding back, the truth and unrighteousness. The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, the men who hold back the truth and unrighteousness, or who suppress the truth and unrighteousness. So this means, uh, trust me, Mark, you have a lot of versions too. But that's a feature, not a bug, because in many translations we can get a much fuller idea of the original. But the Vulgate in the Dewey Rames and all this stuff is there are also other versions. All right, so men who suppress the truth and unrighteousness. This means these men know the truth and are what? Oh yeah, New King. Yeah, so New King James is what I was reading. I think Palmetto. Maybe not. Maybe it was the NASB. But yeah, suppress the truth. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Now, I won't ask anyone to post the rest of the thought because the rest of the thought goes through the end of the chapter, I believe, all the way down to verse 32. So I think there's like 16 verses after this or 14 verses after this. But the rest of the verse, the rest of the passage is what results from these men who know the truth and suppress it unrighteously. I guess there's some men who know the truth and suppress it inadvertently. I don't know. And it is an absolutely astounding list. It includes homosexuality, murder, gossiping, all sorts of stuff. But all mostly Democrats. No, absolutely, Mark. That's where I'm going with this. Actually, yeah, you beat me to it. All of these crazy things are the result of men who know the truth and suppress it unrighteously. It's punishments. It says, because of these men who suppress the truth unrighteously, God gives these people over to all these terrible results. They're the men who do this, the men who suppress truth unrighteously. Their women are given over to whatever it was, and the men are gay and murderers and anyway, read the rest of it. But it is our modern world. It is the West. It is America. It is what we're dealing with today, and it starts with men who suppress the truth unrighteously, and then God gives all these people over to these terrible things as a punishment. It's a result. These people really almost aren't even choosing these evil actions. These evil actions are resulting because men who know the truth are suppressing it, and the result becomes these horrible things. And we see later too. I think it's Paul again who says, "Desire not many of you to be teachers, because teachers have this incredible burden they carry, this high standard." But it makes it very, 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 very hinging on us as men to not make those compromises that we want to make. I catch myself all the time wanting to water down a truth in order to not, and this might be where you can suppress the truth in a not in an unrighteous way. Like, I don't know what, anti mind bomb. I'm not sure what's going on there, anti. You'll have to explain that to me. I'm not up on my memes. Where I don't want to, like, I tell myself, well, I don't want to drive them away from the truth, or I don't want to be mean, or I don't want to be rude, or well, it'd be awkward, and so I'm not holding the line on some things that the line should be held on. Now, I don't think that's suppressing the truth unrighteously. That's probably why that passage is written that way, to add the unrighteousness in there. But that means that, and this is nothing I need another gun wants to talk about, we need to get back to the guns. We'll get back to the guns in a second, Anita. Let me finish this thought. Those of us who believe we have acquired a little bit of knowledge in our years have a very, very heavy burden. Thank you, Anti. A very, very heavy burden to express accurately God's truth. If we sugarcoat them, if we try to soften them or lessen them, then we are not being kind. We are not being nice. We're actually setting people up for terrible, terrible, terrible curses. You read the rest of that chapter down to, I believe it's verse 32, and you see what is the result of men who suppress the truth unrighteously. That's why it's like not spanking a child that deserves it, basically. What was I about to say? God's laws have to be. We can't substitute our words for God's words, because the best of us is an incredibly flawed man, destined for damnation without intervention from on high, right? Like there's none is righteous, no, not one. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. This is what the foundational beliefs of our faith. We are separated from God, and we are it tells us the heart is desperately wicked and deceitful above all things. That's the heart of men. The heart of I don't remember. I'm paraphrasing, so please forgive me. But the heart of people is desperately wicked and deceitful above all things. We cannot trust ourselves. We cannot trust other people. We have to rely on what God said and not elevate anything to that level. That doesn't mean we can't have philosophies. It doesn't mean we can't have principles that aren't, as long as our principles and philosophies don't contradict what God said. It doesn't mean that like God didn't have Levi's blue jeans, so I don't wear Levi's blue jeans. No, but it does mean if he said something, it has to stand. And if he didn't say something, we cannot elevate man's laws to the level of God's laws. And every denomination I've ever been involved in, Protestant, well, I've always been a Protestant, but I've seen this in every Protestant denomination I've ever been in. And now I'm a Torah keeper, and I see it in the Torah keeping community too. And obviously it's in other groups as well. This is a basic part of the human condition. I know the big one I'm thinking of in the moment is I used to be a Pentecostal, grew up in the Pentecostal church. Good people, had some really nice things about it, but they had convinced themselves that there was, the baptism of the Holy Spirit was an event that you had to seek after, and when you were baptized with the Holy Spirit, it would manifest itself in the speaking in the speaking of tongues, the prayer language tongue, not the foreign language tongue. And if you did not show the evidence of speaking in tongues, you did not have the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And if you did not have the baptism of the Holy Spirit, you were not as much of a empowered believer as you could be if you would go get the baptism of the Holy Spirit, which they believed you could get if you just asked for it. We weren't snake handlers, Anti. That's those are what you now. Those people live near me. I live in the area of the country where the snake handlers are are right up the road, or were. They're not really there anymore. They're pretty much all gone, unsurprisingly. But we call those people holiness or mountain holiness. Uh, that's usually the people who would, and they also drank strychnine. They would drink poison and handle snakes. But yeah, there was a guy just a couple counties up, and this was decades ago now at this point. But he was kind of famous. He would sleep with his snakes. You know, he would make his kids sleep with the snakes underneath the bed. They'd be in cages underneath the kids' bed so the kids wouldn't be scared of them and stuff. And yeah, he got bit a lot, and a couple of his kids got bit, and they were kind of like the last of that. I'm sure somewhere there's still some vestiges of it, uh, but yeah, no, the snake handlers were. So there were Pentecostals, there's charismatics, and then there was the snake handlers. So I was like 2 levels below the snake handlers. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, snakes make wonderful bedfellows. I, but the Pentecostals turned this into a point of doctrine that they rose to the level of Scripture. You know, they would tell you that this is a kind of it was non-negotiable. You could not be a pastor or you couldn't be in leadership in a lot of those denominations if you did not affirm that you believed that the baptism of the Holy Spirit was evidenced by the speaking of tongues. They would not allow you into leadership. They raised their theology to the level of God's words, and you see this in all sorts of stuff. Every denomination has something like this. I've seen independent Baptists that would tell you that women go to hell if they wear pants, and that's not even like it's not a joke. They would tell you that and would claim to believe it. I don't think many of them. Surely you couldn't, but they would say that. And we can find this in every denomination. Every Christian denomination has something. Yeah, I know Torah keepers that just say some absolutely batshit crazy stuff. Absolutely batshit crazy stuff. And good people, but they raise their words to the level of God's words. And it's just part of the human condition, and we can't do it. You know, Eve sinned. They always tell us that Eve sinned. Well, I need another gun. We'll get to the guns. Yeah, but my papa said, oh, my granddaddy was a preacher for 40 years, and he said, Deuteronomy 6:7. Someone get us the text from Deuteronomy 6:7. I want to see what that says. That's Anita's one verse. That's his life verse. I have a life verse too. It's Ecclesiastes 12:16. I think it's 12:16. Might be 12:13. I don't know. Somewhere down there at the end of Ecclesiastes. It's like the second to last verse in Ecclesiastes, which says basically, you know, what is the end of the matter? Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. That's a good one, Anita. I don't know how Palmetto's so good at this. If you met him in person, the man can barely read. He drools on himself when he talks. I'm kidding. I jest. You know, we always get told that Eve's sin was pride. Eve's sin wasn't pride. It tells us, nice projection. It tells us what Eve's sin was. Eve's sin was grasping for the knowledge of good and evil. God told her something was evil, and she decided that no, it could be good. That's the knowledge of good and evil. God says one thing and you decide no, something else is the case. And that's the root of pretty much all sin. You know, God says one thing, he tells us his yoke is easy, his burden is light. It's not difficult to do, and we still tell ourselves all the time that no, what he said was not correct. We're going to fix it for him. Silly God. He just forgot to write it down. He didn't, he wasn't clear in his communication. You know, what happens is that when he told that stuff to them, he told it to them correctly, but then, you know, it got changed around a little bit and it's been translated a bunch, and you know, there's cultural things that we don't understand. And so, you know, it was really only written for them. There's some lessons we can draw from it. We're going to be good people and live good moral lives, but we're really what we need to know. And Christ confronts this directly in Matthew. I think it's Matthew 6, or I don't know, somewhere in the Gospels, where he's like, no, I told you to honor thy father and mother, which he says in that case means to provide for them financially in their old age. And he said, but you guys are all saying, well, I'm not going to give any money to my parents because I'm giving that money to the temple instead. And he's like, no. I told you honor your father and mother. I didn't tell you to give money to the temple, because he technically didn't. That's a whole nother thing. You've created this whole category of thing, you know, supporting the temple, which is a good thing, but they raised it to this level of God's words. They made it God's words. And those weren't God's words. I've been picking on Protestants specifically because normally I pick on Mark pretty hard because Mark's a Catholic. Our Catholic brethren do this a lot, but one of the ones that they really do it to the most that bothers me is there's 16 of you in here. This is the Revolting Man channel. If you can't handle a little bit of man talk, you probably should go, you know, watch Barbie Swan Lake or something. This probably isn't the channel for you. That's your trigger warning. We're about to talk about a man topic. Seems like a vacation. So our Catholic brethren raise masturbation to being a mortal sin. That if you are you're actively engaged in masturbation, that you're actually not capable of salvation. Now they're very honest, I think, about this one. When it comes to this issue, Catholics are actually in a different category because they have a whole mechanism for this, where they say that, yeah, no, we can promulgate new rules. They're not God's rules. They're still binding, but they don't rise to the level of God's rules. So they actually have made themselves a little category that gets them in some gray areas on this that the rest of us don't have. They have this thing called the magisterium, which is this combination of the Pope and the cardinals that can promulgate new moral absolutes. The Pope can maybe do it on his own sometimes, but it's always because of the College of Cardinals. But the College of Cardinals can't do it without the Pope. They got this thing called the magisterium. But we can read God's laws about masturbation, and what God says, that if a man masturbates, that he's unclean until evening and he has to wash himself with water. I don't know what the Amish ordinances are. Now, what makes that interesting is that is one of the laws of Moses, one of the laws that Moses gave. They're not Moses' laws, they're God's laws. And it follows a verse that says, because this says you're unclean. So okay, you masturbate, you're unclean, which would well, yeah, Palmetto, that's where we're going next. So, which would make, the casual reader say, okay, well, if it causes uncleanness, it must be sin. Well, no, because the verse right before that says that if you have sex with your wife, you're unclean till evening and you have to wash your clothes. It's the exact same result if you do something righteous, have sex with your wife, which is actually commanded, be fruitful and multiply, as it is if you masturbate. The end result is the same. You're unclean till evening and you have to wash with water. So, and that's the only time God deals with masturbation in the whole book. The whole thing with Onan and Tamar, that's not masturbation. That was sex. Uh, so if someone's talking about onanism, they're not talking about masturbation. They're talking about a guy who had sex with his dead brother's wife and then, pulled out so that she wouldn't get pregnant. It says it right there in the text. So, uh, uh, so this would be one of those areas. I picked on the Pentecostals first, and I guess I'll finish this topic with the Catholics, where, in my opinion, the Catholics take this tradition of men and they raise it to the level of God's words, because God specifically said, masturbation, no big deal. Uh, I know that's going to be controversial. That's one of the things that helped me, but realizing that was one of the things that actually helped me get a handle on my masturbation problem. Um, I got a handle on it. Get it? Uh, and it's kind of uh, it is a really good. I didn't want to go to the Catholic route because I didn't want to pick on Mark again. Uh, but it's kind of the best example we have. I can think of in the moment where we've raised a tradition of men. And by the way, probably pretty good idea to minimize. Well, the other problem there, Mark, is you'd have to show me where lusting is a sin. Uh, because lusting is desiring, and desiring is not a sin. It's what you desire that's a sin. Okay, Mike says that the Amish oblong were laws made up by elders. They say if you don't follow the ordnungs, you will not go to heaven. Ordnungs are the rules for clothing, what machines one can and cannot be. That would absolutely be an example of this, Mike. Uh, uh, if you're going to tell someone that something will impede their salvation, all right, that something will keep them from being reconciled to their God, uh, uh, that's rising your words up to the level of God's words. That's partaking in the knowledge of good and evil. That's the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and I think that's a desperate sin. Uh, I would say that's a mortal sin, and I think that's one of the things. It's a bigger concept than that Paul is talking about in Romans 1:18. Here's the circle. We're going to complete the circle. We're not just here bashing Mark. Uh, we like Mark. He's a good man, honest man. Uh, that is involved in suppressing the truth unrighteously. If you're substituting your words for God's words, then you are first off you're uh, denigrating God's words because you're comparing them to your words. Uh, but you're trying to declare what is good and what is evil, and that is partaking in the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. That's Eve's sin, uh, and I think that's what we see Paul talking about here in Romans 1:18. One of the things. There's more to it. I mean, you could just also absolutely just be suppressing it, like you know, you can't read the Bible. Let's not go there though, because everyone's guilty of that. We had to be dragged, everyone, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, everyone had to be dragged kicking and screaming into translating the Bible into the vernacular. The Greeks didn't want it translated out of Greek. The Romans didn't want it translated out of Latin. The early Protestants didn't want it translated into like English and stuff. I think they wanted to keep it. I think like Henry VIII wanted to keep it in Latin. Elizabeth wanted to. So like Henry VIII and Elizabeth were both strong Protestants, and it wasn't until King James that you get that AKJV with Geneva notes. It wasn't until James the First that there was an authorized English translation of the Bible, and then that kind of there had been the Wycliffe Bible, which was an underground English translation. There had been German translations. I mean, that's what one of the things Martin Luther had done was translated the Bible into German. So the Germans were kind of leading the way on that. But it was a long time after the death of Luther before it was technically legal to have a English translation. Yeah, I use King James Version for my public reading. In my private study, which calling what I do study is, straining the word a little bit, but sure, we'll go with it. I like to jump back and forth between NASB 95, so that's New American Standard Bible 1995 version. Allegedly, there were some things that happened to that version after 1995 that make it not as desirable. I still always go back to the King James. I really like the Young's literal translation. And then I frequently find the ESV, the English Standard Version, is useful for me personally for some reason. Just probably because growing up, I read like I was exposed to a lot of Shakespeare and Charles Dickens and a lot of Charles Dickens actually, and just a lot of English literature. So it's possible that it's just maybe my early programming kind of fits in with that ESV, but for some reason the ESV sometimes will be easier for me to process than almost anything else. But all that is deep stuff. Let's go see what Anita said about guns. Oh, I can't get back to my chats. My chats are gone. Huh. Oh, well. Dewey Ramey's for me. Yeah, I know, Mark. That's why I mentioned it earlier. When you were talking about all the different versions. Yeah, there's the Dewey Rames. I guess the Dewey Rames is a translation of an English translation of the Vulgate, right? That's where Anita said Deuteronomy 1426 covers this. And Amish laws, lusting. We should probably talk about lusting because this is a big issue for most men. So this is going to be controversial, and I'm actually a little glad that Buddy Bear went to bed, because he I think vehemently disagrees with me. Oh wow, Anita's a little bit of a scholar there. Largest privately held collection. Can't read Coptic or Syrian very well. That means that's pretty impressive though that you can read Latin at all. So Strong's 10 Tigers, Strong's isn't a version of the Bible. It's I lost very little at 60. Uh, Strong's is a concordance. So it's like a dictionary of Greek and Hebrew words that get used in the Bible so that you can go look up the words that were translated into whatever language you're reading it in our case, English. So Strong's is very useful, and I use it occasionally. I am more prone to just consult a bunch of different translations of a verse, because even with those definitions, they can still be pretty hard to kind of parse out. Because these words were used over the course of like 5,000 years, 3,000 years. I think from Moses to say, John the Beloved, who wrote, the Revelation of John, the last book in the Bible. I think it's like 2,500 years. And so over the course of 2,500 years, Hebrew changed drastically from the time of Moses to the time of Christ. And Greek also, not as much because it wasn't around as long. So like when people talk about, oh, I study Hebrew, like the first question you have to ask them is, well, which Hebrew do you study? Because there's Paleo Hebrew, and there's like classic Hebrew and modern Hebrew. There's like 4 or 5 different Hebrews. And like there's different Greeks, Koine Greek and other stuff. And I don't even know all the different. So like I have a friend who has a doctorate, does lust apply to revolvers. You are absolutely allowed to desire revolvers in any way you prefer, Dean. And I was just thinking about the revolver issue recently. Well, because all this SIG P320 stuff, that at the end of it all, a revolver does what the vast majority of us need a pistol to do. I would say even in the military today, that the military, the regular military, not the Latin hasn't changed much because yeah, no, you're right. Latin hasn't changed much. The regular military, not the special forces operators, could still be very well served by revolvers. For what the regular military needs a pistol to do, revolvers would do everything that they need. You could chamber it in, a light 357, 125 grain defensive 357. You absolutely could have a 6-shot cylinder, or if you wanted to get crazy, you could make it a 7-shot. And it would do it because pistols are so used so infrequently in the military that anything you would need them for, a revolver could do. And William likes the Kimber. Yeah, think about it. There's people out there who would tell you that you were underarmed with a revolver, but they would also tell you that the 1911 would be a great sidearm. And what's the difference between a 357 revolver and a 1911? 1 round. Standard loading in a 1911 is 7 shots. 7 shots of 45 are not better than 6 shots 357. 357 is a vastly superior round to 45 ACP. Vastly. Hey, Last Corporal Veteran. Yeah, I'm sorry. It was another surprise stream. I had a free evening, and it had been a long time since I'd been on, so I said, well, I better. And I wanted to. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff going on, and I had thoughts swirling around in my head, and it's always nice to get to talk about them with you men. And as usual, they were a little chaotic and disorganized, but just talking about them, sort of helps me resolve them a little bit. But Henny, yeah, no, revolvers are absolutely still relevant. They will absolutely do anything, 99.99% of anything anyone would ever need a pistol to do, a revolver will do. And those incredibly rare instances when anyone ever needed to do a mag change, they're just so vanishingly rare that it's not worth worrying about. And you know, you can reload revolvers. It's not like you can't reload them, especially if you've got speed loaders. Now it's not as quick as a mag change, obviously, and there's more steps, and it's a little more complex. And uh, oh man, I think a lever action 357 Magnum is one of the most underappreciated weapons there is. Especially, I think in almost any scenario, home defense. I think PCCs are vastly superior because I put those in the category of PCC. Vastly superior choice for home defense than either the AR-15 or a shotgun. Now I like 41 mag better even than 357 Magnum, and I love 357 Magnum. I am not criticizing 357. I think it's a great round. 41 is even a little better. And I guess 44 is even better than that. Although at some point you have to start questioning. 44 is a powerful, powerful round. And if you are going to shoot 44, are you better with a or regular rifle round? Oh, that's interesting. You were an armored truck driver, and they were training you how to use speed loaders. I never got any training with speed loaders, but I used to carry a revolver because of my hand. And I did work with the speed loaders, but never under stress or under pressure. So that would change everything. But there's just a little bit of work I did with them. I was like, well, these are still pretty effective, I mean, if I really did have to reload and didn't have a choice, I mean, it's not like I'm going to instantly die. Oh, you had a speed loader. You're dead. But a lever action in 357 or 41 Magnum, at least on the East Coast. Now, look, out west, them boys have got some. They have got some ranges out there. They have got some distance they have to shoot. So maybe it's not an option out there as much because we are talking about 100, 150 yard weapon, 200 yards if you're good and train and practice. And back east here, where I live up in the Appalachian Mountains, 150 yard shots unheard of. I mean, you had to go down to the high school football field to get a 100 yard shot. If you go down to the railroad, and you're shooting along the railroad, you might be able to find a longer shot. But 100 yards up here is insane. You're just not going to get it. You couple here and there, you might find a pasture that's 100 yards, maybe 300 yards. But it's very, very rare that you're going to get a 200 yard shot on the East Coast. And a lever action in 357 or 41 Magnum absolutely will cover. And now they've reintroduced elk. They've reintroduced elk into North Carolina, and they have gotten good and established up there. And they're hoping that they're going to expand out over the whole Appalachian Range again, because they used to be out here. And so if the elk do get reestablished, I don't know that this still holds true. But as of right now, there is nothing in the Appalachians that you can't shoot reliably with the 357 out of a 16-inch barrel. Nothing. Our black bears are not that. We'll get a 350-pound bear sometime. you absolutely can kill a 350-pound black bear with a 357 out of a 20-inch barrel. Because we're talking about like whatever your loading is. But let's say you're using yeah, they are beautiful. I've gone up to Cherokee where they're at and seen them, and they are gorgeous. Uh, this may be done. It's not singeing my mustache hairs. That's when I call it. When I start hearing my mustache hairs sizzle, I know that it's over. Uh, but as of right now, there's nothing on the East Coast you couldn't shoot with that little lever action in 357 and not expect it to fall down. Our deer especially. Our deer are sissies. I guess if you get out in the Midwest, you start getting up into Illinois and the cornfields. I guess when I think of East Coast, I'm thinking of Appalachians. And I guess if you think of the East Coast as being anything east of the Mississippi, then yeah, you gotta think about the cornfields out there in Illinois and Indiana, and some of that stuff in Ohio is flat as a pancake. Uh, but even the flatter areas of the Southeast, you get down into Mississippi and Louisiana and some of those places where it's flat, but the forests are so dense. There's just still not open open areas to take those kind of shots that you get out west. I don't know what you'd do with the 338 Lapua out here. I don't even know where you'd go to train with it. I mean, where I don't know. I'm sure there's ranges out there. Uh, I'm you just think about the Iowa deer weigh 250 pounds. Yeah, we'd have to get like 3 deer to get 250 pounds. Uh, a big buck here will be 200 pounds. If you get the biggest whitetail, you'd got a 400-pound Springer mount a few years ago, 700 plus pounds. Wow. Yeah, our whitetail deer here, they're goats. I mean, they're absolutely just goats. They're, and I'm not even like being facetious. They're barely any bigger than goats. Uh, they're taller, but they're much thinner. Uh, I've shot full-grown deer that weighed 90 pounds live weight before I gutted them. They were young deer, but they didn't have spots on them or anything more. They were, you know. But anyway, I love that package. I think it'd be great for home defense, great around the homestead. If I had to pop a coyote or a neighborhood dog, or like if there was a possum, got 6 deer in the backyard right now for Anita. Wow. Like you could use that from anything from popping a possum, getting in the chicken coop, to God forbid you had to drop a black bear one day that was messing around the house, because we do have black bear around. Uh, you could drop hogs. If the hog was screwing up the garden or something, there's just nothing you couldn't do with that. Uh, and they're slick as can be. I had a little Rossi out here for a little while that someone had lent me. The Sasquatch had lent me. He's got a Rossi in 357, and I didn't need hearing protection. I was shooting 125 grain, just regular self-defense loads. I think that's and it was hearing safe. It wasn't making my ears ring or anything. I just absolutely love that little package, and it's never gonna scare anybody. God forbid you ever had to defend your actions in a court of law with that rifle. It doesn't look scary. It doesn't look like you were some natural born killer out there. Oh wow, Mike's got a 2 deer and an antelope in the yard. But yeah, out west, 300-yard shot is probably much want ranch hand 357, but can't despite the addiction. What is the ranch hand 357? That sounds familiar. I feel like that's one of the smaller companies who make a lever action chambered in it. Tell me if I'm wrong. But yeah, one of my sons-in-law, has a lever action in 44 Magnum, and again, I think it's just a fantastic package. Drug dealers across the street, 10 Tigers needs to move. Maybe if you've got the drug dealers across the street, 10 Tigers, you better go with something with a little higher capacity. I still think a PCC is a great choice, especially in urban environments, suburban environments. Even 9 mil out of a longer barrel is is very effective out to 75, 100 yards. And they follow me. They can't lose their best customer, huh, 10 Tigers? And I've still got a 9 mil PCC build I need to finish. If I ever have extra money, I'm going to get her done. But I guess if I don't, yeah, 44 mag is an impressive round all the way around, Mark. It just is a very, very impressive round. And very versatile, lots of different loadings. I've been around for a long time. As much as I love 41 mag, and I do love 41 mag, it's hard to justify 41 mag in a world where 44 mag exists. The only really, it only has two advantages, and they're significant, and I think it's still worthwhile, which is the 41 mag shoots a little flatter, and it's just a little tamer in a pistol. And 44 is very manageable. Anyone should be able to shoot a 44. But 41 is just a little more manageable. And I would even go so far as to say 41 mag is like, because I used to have one. Now I had it in a 6-inch Blackhawk, Ruger Blackhawk. 10 Tigers, I am technically still buying silver, except I'm not buying silver because my work has dried up. I'll just give up on that. And so my work has dried up, and so instead of buying silver right now, obviously I'm, because for me silver is yes, that Mac 5 9 mil HK clone is a really slick looking little thing. For me silver is a medium term savings account, and so if there's any chance I would need to access the savings within the next 6 months, I won't put it in silver. Silver is a medium-term hold for me. So I am not actively buying silver right now, but when, because I don't have the option to let my employment situation stagnate. But when the HK slap, the G3 slap. So when my employment situation resolves itself here in the next week or two, because it has to resolve itself in the next, that's not true. I've got a lot of silver, a fair amount of silver. I've got probably 6 months worth of living expenses saved in silver. So I could start selling silver and I'd be fine through the end of the year. So I'm not in any kind of crisis, but I don't want to sell my silver, even at these prices. But I'm hopeful to be back to stacking silver again within the month, because again, it's a savings account for me. I want 1,500 ounces bare minimum. I'm not there yet. I need to redo the math on that. But yes, for I think 1,500 ounces of silver is a year's worth of stress-free living. It's basically a year's worth of wages. So I want 1,500 ounces. I'm not even halfway there yet. I'll just tell you. I mean, I have 360 ounces, and so I do not want to have to break into that. But the thing about silver, in my opinion, this is my opinion. I am I am streaming this from my double wide trailer at the end of a dirt road. So, if you take financial advice from me, you're an idiot. Uh, but to me, the price of silver is irrelevant. Not, it was almost irrelevant. There are no definitive statements about this type of stuff, so I shouldn't be making them. But to me, the price of silver is almost irrelevant because what silver is for me is a wealth preservation savings account. Uh, it's not a, it can be an investment and it one day will be an investment, but that's not why I buy it. I buy it as a wealth preservation savings account. Now, I also invest in stocks a little bit, not as much as silver, but a little bit. I stay out of crypto. I don't believe. Yeah, Mercury dimes, love them. I love Mercury dimes. I've got almost as many of those as anything else. I try to do 50-50 between constitutional and bullion, and the majority of my constitutional is in silver dollars, Morgans mostly, although I do have a significant number of peace dollars. And then the next biggest portion of it is in silver dimes, because you can buy a dime for $2.50. If you have any amount of money, you can go into the coin shop and walk out with a dime. And I should be doing that even now. Still, I should still be buying a dime, just to keep the habit up. But I do try to buy at least an ounce at a time, just to keep the premiums down a little bit. But you're not really saving any premiums on the constitutional. You're pretty much, you're paying a set price whether you buy one or 10,000. Not really, but yeah, I'm still a firm believer in the silver. The price is up about 40% over the course of the last year, which makes it tempting to think about it as an investment, because any investment that goes up 40%, in a year, that's phenomenal, but that's not typical. That's indicative of what we're doing to the value of our dollar by printing all this money. I am a true believer in the silver, and I'm not going to give up on the silver. I do wonder. Look, we got to assume what is a trustworthy place to buy Morgans. So, Mike, I am a big fan of the local coin shops. If you find one that's honest, I have one here local that they're honest, they're upfront, their prices aren't like competitive with the most competitive prices, but they, wow, Dean's kid's tooth fairy used Morgan dollars. That's impressive. Uh, but they're competitive, and then they look for ways to make it up to me at different times. So like, uh, they're selling Morgans for $32 a piece, which is maybe a little high if you're going to go order $200 worth of Morgans online. But I'm not gonna. I don't buy silver $200 at a time. I buy silver $60 and $75 at a time. So if I was buying it online, I'd be paying shipping and insurance, and I would end up paying as much per ounce as I do paying the slightly higher prices at my coin shop, where I have an established relationship, and they will at various times. I'll come in, and I'll usually tell when they're going to do it, because you can see in their eyes they're doing some mental math, and they're thinking, okay, Zach's been in here, you know, X, and they're trying to decide how much of a break they're going to cut me. Uh, and at times they've just given me free silver. Uh, they'll say things like, "Oh, you're a good customer. Here, have an extra something." Uh, uh, yeah, we do like our silver, Palmetto. It's God's money. God calls it money. Ha! You can't argue with that. Ha 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 ha! Ha. Try to. So I like the local coin shops. However, if you're going to buy $200 worth at a time or more, uh, yeah, the love of it, not it itself. You're a smart young man. I can't believe you made that argument. Uh, uh, you can get the lowest price online. SD Bullion, JD whatever. There's this new one I'm hearing about recently called Summit Metals. I've only ever bought online twice, and both times I bought from SD Bullion. But again, I wasn't buying enough to get the free shipping. So I did just as well, if not better, by going to my local coin shop. And if you don't have one, now pawn shops are a terrible place to buy, unless it's a pawn shop that's dedicated to being a good precious metals dealer, which I have found. And I used to, the very first place I started buying regular was a pawn shop outside of Atlanta who took precious metals seriously and gave good solid deals a little bit above spot. And I would still be using them if it wasn't that I had a good reliable coin shop here in town. Well, not here, but not far away. The town where I end up doing the majority of my business, uh, we have a good coin shop. Uh, my 79-cent cheap chili a few years ago, now $1.40. Yeah, no, there's no doubt. Prices have gone up. It's slowed down a little bit since the election, uh, but you can't print as much money as we printed during COVID and not expect prices to go up. I mean, I think something like 90% of all dollars ever printed have been printed in like the last 10 years or something. I do love silver. Uh, I do. I love silver. I get a little. I even like it better. I have a small amount of gold, not much, but I like the silver better than the gold. I think I've got like a half ounce of gold total if you add up all my coins. But what I really like are old American coins, and and so that's why I like my silver better because I can afford old American silver coins. I do have some old American gold coins, but they're damaged. That's the only way I could afford them. They're not really collector American gold coins. They're damaged, so they're not like collector pieces. They don't have a numismatic value really. They were all three of them were set in. So I've got four. One actually is a decent little collector piece, and then three of them were set in rings. Uh, yeah, and the other thing I like about the old coins is it just shows that we valued our workers because we used to pay them in beautiful, valuable money. If you look at a silver dollar, a real silver dollar, it's a beautiful, artistic piece with lots of symbolism and meaning that was designed to convey ideas and our values and our principles. And we were paying people with things of significance and meaning and value. Unlike today, where even when you do get a coin, it looks like monopoly money because they've had to devalue it so much that they have to make sure a nickel lasts for 50 years. So everything's flat and it's got no high spots that can get rubbed off or anything, and it's all ugly and cartoony. And you look at a Morgan dollar or a peace dollar. Peace dollars are undervalued. I actually think peace dollars are probably the best value in silver. But but everything on that damn coin is some kind of idea or principle, and it's designed to be visually appealing. but also have a gravitas, be something serious and meaningful. Our old coins are very cool, and they were that way all the way up until, in my opinion, I'm not a big fan of yeah, until 1964, everyone's pocket change was silver. I'm not a big fan of any of the presidential coins, to be honest with you. I think that was a mistake to start putting people's faces, real, people's faces on our money. I really like the Benjamin Franklin 50-cent pieces, so I'm a little bit of a hypocrite. That was kind of was that the first one, or was it the Lincoln cent? The Lincoln cent might have been the first presidential coin. And then I think the Washington quarter was the second. And then came the Franklin half dollar. And then it was the Roosevelt dime. And then it was the Kennedy 50-cent piece. And then the Ike came later. And some of the Ikes are silver too, but not 90%. I think they're 40%. But I think that was a mistake. I think we should have left them with, all of these personifications of liberty or wisdom. The Mercury head dime is not, it's not Mercury is not depicted on the Mercury head dime. It's actually wisdom. No, liberty. It's liberty again. But the hat, the winged cap she's wearing is supposed to represent wisdom. In fact, if you look, it says wisdom right there on the hat band. It's not the Greek god Mercury. It's actually a female figure representing liberty wearing a cap of wisdom. So it's liberty crowned with wisdom is what it's supposed to represent. Our money just had meaning. And it conveyed principles. Uh, and it was a better time in our country. All righty, man. I think I have run out of steam. I know I've run out of energy. Cause I always get, energized in a way by doing these live streams and talking to y'all, man, and making fun of Palmetto and Mark. Thank you, William. You have a good evening. Palmetto, good night, sir. Men, we appreciate you. I will say it again. I hope it's not going to be so long before I do another one of these. I think life is about to calm down a little bit, but every time I say that, something else crazy happens. If I told you what happened this last time, you'd P320's on sale. Uh, Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Mark. Uh, we had some family upheaval over the last couple of weeks. Nothing, no, it was a crisis, but it wasn't a. It's fixed now. Uh, it's not my story to tell, but it was a big deal. But it wasn't an eternal big deal. It was a near-term big deal. All righty, man. We appreciate you, and again, we'll talk to you soon. Mr. T made the wrong move by getting rid of the penny. He should just make the dollar stronger. Yeah, so now you got to go and be damn interesting. Thank you, Mike. So the problem with getting rid of the penny is simply that it means we'll need more nickels, and nickels actually cost more to mint than pennies do. Making the dollar stronger is a problem because that's deflation. And deflation is very, very good for you and me and very, very bad for the system. Now, we don't like the system. We want bad things to happen to the system. Deflation should happen. But it would be so disruptive and so destructive that Demarest out. Are you in Demarest, Anita? I think I was in Demarest just the other day. Well, I mean, I would be in Demarest a lot. It's not that far away. I think I'm 25 minutes from Demarest. Maybe 30. If you're in Demarest, we got to meet up. Hell, I'm probably going to be in Cornelia tomorrow morning. I'll be riding right through Demorest. Where was I? So yeah, deflation would be a good thing, but it ain't gonna happen, unfortunately. Should, but yeah, you would have to destroy the banks and destroy the Fed and completely. You would have to destroy our entire economy and build it back from there. You wouldn't have deflation. What you would have would be a whole new system, which again, I'm with you. It should happen. Good thing. But it wouldn't just be deflation. Oh, let's keep the penny, deflate the value, deflate the money, or deflate the money supply. Let's be precise in our language. It would be, oh, what money are we using next? Because we've just blown up with the previous system. 10 Tigers, you're 50 miles from Demorest? Who was in Demorest? Anita was in Demorest. And 10 Tigers is 50 miles from Demorest. We need to do another meetup. We haven't done one in a long time. I'll start thinking about that. We'll do another meetup soon. Because if we've got this many guys this close to Northeast Georgia, we need to take advantage of that and have us a little meeting. All right. Yeah, Anita, we got to meet up. Okay. You just said the catchwords. Go down and talk to Rodney. Actually, if you go into the coin shop and talk to Rodney, Rodney will give you my phone number. And you can just text me and we can arrange it that way. All right. We'll talk to you soon, man.